Hello and thank you for joining us on the news on NTA International, reaching you live from Abuja. I am Norlene Abel Ame. First, the news headlines. Ahead of induction retreat, Secretary to the Government of the Federation releases documents on policies and programs of the administration to ministers designate. Update on 2019 annual flood outlook predictions. Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency sends warning signal to mitigate flood-related disasters. Thus, Federal High Court orders freezing of bank accounts valued at 9.9 billion naira linked to former Governor Akinwumi Ambode of Lagos State. And now the news. As the governing All Progressives Congress continues to strategize for effective implementation of the next level agenda towards achieving national prosperity, President Muhammadu Buhari has promised to be more conscious of the party's interest as well as conscientious in taking key decisions. This was while receiving members of the National Working Committee of the APC on a courtesy visit. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, has released documents on the policies and programs of the Buhari administration to ministers designate in Abuja to guide them in the execution of the next level.
These cases include status report on policies, programs, and projects of the Buhari administration, roadmap of the administration, and the Federal Executive Council handbook. SGF boss Mustapha told the ministers designate to diligently study the documents, which he says contain strategic information that will enable all cabinet members pull together as a team in policy implementation and service delivery to Nigerians. Some of the ministers designate speak on this approach of government.
This means that this administration is going to start on a very serious note. The ministers are expected to hit the ground running, and every minister, our expectation is will have clear deliverables that will be expected of them.
It's just a proactive measure. Before you join the cabinet, you should know what is expected of you to do.
The office of the SGF, particularly the cabinet office, has given us so much hope that yes, indeed, information dissemination will be very easy, and from here we'll now be able to also talk to Nigerians, and then things will flow.
So it's like our interaction with the government of the Federation has already started. We call it evidence of good things ahead.
Together we can make Nigeria better. Together we can make the next level better.
It is expected that President Buhari would assign respective portfolios to all 43 ministers designate after their swearing-in ceremony slated for Wednesday, 21st of August at the council chambers of the State House. Meanwhile, an induction retreat for the ministers will hold on 19th and 20th August 2019 in Abuja Mitaire Ikben. NTA News.
Leveraging on the gains of the support of the government of South Korea to in place e-governance in Nigeria's public service, the Korea International Cooperation Agency, KOICA Nigeria office is sampling opinions on how to make the policy work in the country. Onenge Fineface reports that the focus of the information exchange is the attainment of a transparent, open and corruption-free governance and public service.
For 6 years, the government of South Korea has been providing support services to help Nigeria consolidate on the gains of e-governance in public service. This support is manifested in the training of public servants within Nigeria and in South Korea, and the eventual approval of the e-governance master plan by the federal government. Stakeholders at this workshop, organized at the instance of the Korea International Cooperation Agency, KOICA Nigeria office, are sharing knowledge to make e-governance work in Nigeria, learning from the Korean experience.
Korea is working with Nigeria to share New innovation facilitating the high growth of the e-governance in Nigeria.
As those driving policy, we can implement the right policies if we understand the digital trends.
The United Nations places South Korea high on its e-governance and e-participation global index. Implementing e-governance, which is hinged on utilizing information communication technology in driving governance and improving the quality and cost of public service delivery, KOICA believes will place Nigeria at par with developed economies of the world and aid in the fight against corruption.
And be determined to develop a robust digital economy, focusing on investment in infrastructure, digital infrastructure, that will enable more of our citizens to participate in the gains of digitalization.
Outcomes of the workshop will determine the methodology for implementing the e-governance master plan in Nigeria. In Abuja, Onengiye Fineface, NTA News.
Director General Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NESA, Clement Onyeso Nze, says if no serious step is taken to mitigate flood-related disasters this year, the consequence will be enormous across the country. He stated this during an update on the 2019 annual flood outlook predictions. Haman Jabani reports.
According to NEMA, over 2.6 trillion naira was lost. Over 5,000 hectares of land submerged.
These statistics of last year's flooding might be a tip of the iceberg if findings from the agency's hydrological measuring stations across the country is anything to go by. As of now, the indices has shown the incidence of flooding taking place in many states just into the corridor of rainy season due to the failure of relevant stakeholders, especially individuals and state governments, despite the warning by the agency on the 2019 flooding predictions. The predictions, which were classified under highly probable flood risk area, probable flooding risk area, and low flood risk area, with 353 local government areas expected to experience some degree of flooding.
States and local government should endeavor to remove structures built within the floodplains, clear blocked drainages, culverts, and waterways. This press briefing becomes very necessary as it is time to alert the citizens to know that the country is yet to enter into the peak of flooding season for the year 2019.
The DG, however, explained that the agency is scaling up sensitization and preventive strategies with relevant stakeholders.
Flooding, of course, is a natural disaster that cannot be entirely ruled out, but if all can do the needful, the loss that comes with it can be minimized. Hamman Jabani, NTA News.
Thank you, Hamman. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has ordered the freezing of the 3 bank accounts with the sum of 9.9 billion naira linked to former Governor of Lagos State Akinwumi Ambode. Justice Chuka Obiazo gave the order following an ex parte application filed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, which is investigating the alleged fraud. Abolore Ogbara reports.
Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) has filed an ex parte application over the freezing of the accounts said to belonging to the Lagos State government, pending the conclusion of investigation and possible prosecution of one Adewale Adesoya, who was the permanent secretary in the office of the Chief of Staff to the former Governor Akinwumi Ambode. In an affidavit filed in support of the ex parte application, a member of EFCC investigating team, Kumi Daniel, said the commission discovered a huge flow of 9.9 billion naira from the state account in the FCMB bank opened on September 17, 2018. During the administration of former Governor Akinwumi Ambode and operated by Adewale Adesoya. Daniel said the schedule by the FCMB account showed how Adewale Adesoya and other signatories to the account made fraudulent transfers from the account of the Lagos State government and dissipated the funds housed in the said accounts. EFCC said without freezing the nominated accounts and temporarily forfeiting the money to the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, there is no way the fraud being perpetrated using the scheduled accounts can be stopped. After listening to the submission by EFCC lawyer Mohammed Abbas, Justice Chuka Obiozo, granted the request. He adjourned further proceedings in the matter till September 9, 2019. In Lagos, Abolore Ogbara, NT News.
Still on judiciary, Kaduna State government has constituted a judicial commission of inquiry into 2018 and 2019 conflicts in Kajuru and neighboring communities. Muhammad Umar Ajingi reports.
The Commission of Inquiry, headed by a senior judge with Kaduna State High Court Issa Aliu, is to identify the immediate and remote causes of the conflict which spread to neighboring communities, with a view to building sustainable peace in the state.
The Kaduna State government expects that the work of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry will not only establish the facts, but will also help government and the communities involved to advance peace and justice. It is our hope that community leaders will encourage people to lift their gaze above division, to embrace a common humanity, and respect the right of everyone to life, liberty, and legitimate livelihoods.
Among its mandates is to identify individuals, traditional and religious institutions, including other associations that might have contributed in fueling the crisis. This is in addition to assessing the level of damage for necessary recommendations to government on legal action against the culprits. In Kaduna, I am Muhammad Umar Ajingi, NTA News.
Internally displaced persons in Zamfara State have benefited from agricultural and educational materials courtesy of the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons. Zamfara State Governor Bello Mohammed, who flagged off the distribution of the materials, described education and agriculture as key areas of empowerment. Haliru Muhammad Umar reports that the beneficiaries were drawn from the 14 local government areas of the state.
Agriculture and education have suffered serious setback in Zamfara State since the eruption of crisis, which forced several affected persons to leave their houses and farmlands for safety. With normalcy gradually returning to the state, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons deemed it necessary to support the IDPs with agricultural inputs and educational items. Items distributed include fertilizers, tractors, motorcycles, seedlings, chemicals, sandals, and reading and writing materials, among others.
I believe this package will contribute in no small measures in uplifting the social and economic conditions of the IDPs in the state.
We're bringing these items, agricultural items, and educational materials to people who have been displaced, but they are ready to go back to farm.
Although this is not the first time the Commission is providing intervention in different forms, this one is unique at the time of the rainy season, when most of the farmers are expected to go back to their farmlands for agricultural activities. In Gusau, Halir Muhammad Umar, NTA News.
And for stories from the financial sector, Rachel Shaibu is our guide.
Hello and welcome to Business News. The African Development Bank Group has signed a $4.8 million institutional support grant to the African Union for implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The grant, approved by the group's board of directors, forms part of a series of interventions by the bank in its lead role to accelerate implementation of the Free Trade Agreement. Meanwhile, the federal government's efforts to evaluate sustainable development goals has put the country on the global map as the first in the Southern Hemisphere to lead the world on the evaluation of the SDGs. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Budget and National Planning, Ernest Umakihe, disclosed this at a workshop in Abuja, underscoring the importance of developing a collective national strategy for the delivery of good monitoring and evaluation strategy that will take into cognizance the common needs of stakeholders at national, subnational levels as well as development partners. The Central Bank of Nigeria, in its latest report tagged Consumer Protection Framework and Guidelines on Disclosure and Transparency, has set out guidelines on the minimum standards expected from financial institutions. The Apex Bank stated that the objective of the guidelines is to protect consumers against the provision of inadequate information and generally guard against lack of
Very well, Rachel. This is the news on NTA International, reaching you from Abuja. We take a short break now. We shall be back with more news in a moment.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogeruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thank you for staying with us. Now to security. Osun State government is soliciting the assistance of the Nigerian Army in tackling security challenges arising from illegal mining in the state. Governor Boyega Oyetola made the appeal when the new general officer commanding 2 Division Nigerian Army Ibadan, Major General Bamidele Omozoge, paid him a courtesy visit in Oshogbo. Femi Aferogun reports.
Osun State is endowed with numerous natural resources, but recently, the illegal mining activities in part of the state is threatening the relative peace being enjoyed by residents. This visit by the General Officer commanding 2 Division of the Nigerian Army, Ibadan, Major General Bamidele Omozoje, created an avenue for the governor to further solicit the assistance of the military in nipping the activities of illegal miners in the board in order to restore lasting peace to the state of the living spring.
From psychological point of view, when people see the armed forces men around, it sends the right signal. Your effort at joining the patrol agency that we're setting up is quite a welcome relief.
The GOC, who just assumed office, promised a robust security relationship with the state.
I assure His Excellency that 2 Division Nigerian Army will work in line with the constitutional rules of the Army to support civil authority, to maintain peace, ensure that security prevails.
Major General Bamidele Omozoje is the 40th GOC 2 Division Nigerian Army Ibadan. In Oshogbo, Femi Afariogun, NTA News.
Still on security, countering piracy through cooperative maritime security efforts is what informed an international study tour to Republic of Kenya by participants of Course 3 of the Naval War College, Nigeria. With the tour concluded, participants say the collaboration will drastically reduce the speed of piracy along Nigerian maritime domain and the Gulf of Guinea. Paul Abel has the report.
The Nigerian maritime environment has been confronted with lots of challenges such as kidnapping, smuggling, maritime terrorism, and piracy resulting to insecurity of lives, as well as negative economic impact on the nation. This was what prompted the Naval War College, Nigeria, Course 3 participants, as part of its operational module, to embark on the tour to Kenya with the aim of drawing lessons for Nigeria and the Nigerian Navy, as well as seeking areas of collaboration.
It must be said that Kenya has in the past decades made tremendous achievements in combating piracy in its maritime domain.
My encouragement is for Nigeria to take its lead and take its position in Africa on this issue.
2 syndicate groups presented their report findings with issues centered on Kenyan Navy's counter-piracy operations within West Indian Ocean, strengths, weaknesses, as well as efforts of Kenyan government at combating piracy for enhanced economic development.
It is hoped that some of the lessons learned, which includes provision of a national maritime strategy and that of power to prosecute, if well implemented, will ensure safety on Nigerian waterways. From the Naval War College, Nigeria, Calabar, I am Paul Abel, NTA News.
13 United States military flag-level officers and 2 United States government senior executives have been in Nigeria as part of a 2-week tour. The capstone tour also took them to Angola, Algeria, Djibouti, and Germany. The delegation, led by Senior Fellow of U.S. Marine Corps General John Paxton, Jr., Tuesday visited the Nigerian Defense Headquarters to meet with their Nigerian military counterparts and expressed appreciation on their enriching visit to Nigeria. Nigeria's success on the battlefield requires knowledge of military doctrine, the ability to operate in coordination with allied forces, and a global perspective on the part of senior government and military leaders to execute their strategic plans. The U.S. government's strategy for Africa focuses on 3 core objectives: advancing trade and commercial ties with key African states, protecting United States from cross-border health and security threats, and supporting key African states' progress towards stability, citizen-responsive government, and self-reliance. Nigeria will continue to explore possibilities aimed at ensuring that Nigerians in the diaspora participate actively in the development of the country. The Nigerian ambassador to the Republic of Benin, Kayode Oguntoashe, stated this while flagging off the National Identification Number Enrollment Program in Cotonou, Benin Republic. Musa Toliad brings us details.
Benin Republic is home to more than 3 million Nigerians. Out of this figure, about 39 are serving various jail terms, including those awaiting trials. The flag-off of the National Identification Number Enrollment Program informed the visit of the Nigerian ambassador to Benin Republic, Kayode Oguntoashe, accompanied by the chairman and chief executive officer, Nigerian Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, to prison civil in Cotonou.
Now that we have known about it, the embassy will follow it up, will get them out and ensure that only those who have been found to be committed one crime or the other are found in the detention center here.
Why we tell them avoid crime and criminality is also our responsibility as directed by Mr. President, that if you don't have to be here, we have to get you out of here.
Having ascertained the status of those in incarceration, it was time for Ambassador Oguntoashe to meet with free Nigerians with a view to encouraging them to key into the National Identification Number Enrollment Program.
We are counting on you to support the government of Nigeria in this project by encouraging every Nigerian under your jurisdiction to enroll for their national identification number.
Seamless registration of business at the corporate